it gives a call-in option. So like we've got a few of our directors here, if I said hop on your computer and sort of, they just, what number can I call? I'll press the code and get in, and so.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's much like the GoToMeeting thing. And then you can screen share.
Yeah.
Is over there.
Yeah, I set my bag down right next to the mic, and it just, I could hear it just.
Oh, there's like lots of
No, you're just way better.
Yeah.
You have to take what you get.
I just wasn't sure.
I figure you want to know.
You got
I can
promoted
see
or
up
Todd
there.
got promoted.
I'm gonna follow along up there. Did a light bulb just go off?
more ways than one.
Yeah, and then you know what? Then I don't have to ding around with my. I have my computer. Yes, remember that when you voted.
Okay. Tell me how far. Perfect.
You okay with that,
Alright.
Anders? Just
Yeah.
one.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I call to order the Monday, August 24th meeting of the River Falls Board of Education. This meeting has been properly notified. Next, we are going to move into a public, into hearing of visiting delegations. What I would ask is if you would like to address the board this evening,
It's picking her up.
come to either the microphone over on that side or over on this side.
She's got to be closer.
So are there any visitors or delegations who would like to address the board?
Stacy, you might want to be closer to the microphone.
Closer, okay.
Pull it up nice and close. Yep.
I think they could hear your name.
Could you please tell us your name?
Good evening, my name is Danny Lean, and I'm here tonight representing the River Falls High School Wildcat volleyball team. Thank you for allowing me to present to the board on behalf of myself and my teammates. I'm not going to stand here today to tell you how much we all really want to play again. I know that you understand that, and you are empathetic towards the position we are in, just as we realize the difficulty you are in as decision makers. We are confident that we can put the necessary protocols and precautions in place that will allow us to play in a safe environment. We are confident of this because we have already been successfully doing it this summer. For example, here at the high school, we have been attending summer ETS, doing mini camps during contact days, and doing group lessons. We also participated in club training for a month at the end of our season, as well as summer camps there. Our varsity returners even played in a 2-day tournament in Appleton with teams from all across the state. These activities were all successful because of the commitment to the safety protocols that were put in place. Some of the precautions consisted of cohorting groups to minimize contact, socially distancing, sanitizing the volleyballs between groups, wearing masks, sanitizing hands when entering, exiting, and during water breaks, and taking temperatures. We want the board to know that we take this pandemic very seriously. We are willing to follow all safety measures if it means we get to play this fall. We also realize that if we are able to play, our season is going to look a lot different. We will lose a lot of matches, and we won't have a full conference. All of these sacrifices are worth it to us if it means we get to play the sport we love with our high school teammates who have become family. We all have a personal story, a why. Mine involves 2 knee injuries, both of which unfortunately involve surgeries. I haven't played in an actual match here since my freshman year in 2018, and I will be a junior this coming fall. Saying I'm looking forward to playing again would be an understatement, and my story, my why, is just one of many. We are all proud to be a part of the River Falls volleyball program, and none of us are willing to give up our season. Please consider voting in favor of us playing this fall. Thank you again for allowing me to address the board and represent my team. I hope that I was able to show you that we do take this pandemic very seriously, and we feel strongly that we can put the necessary precautions in place to keep ourselves, our families, and our classmates safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Tell us your name.
Hi, my name is Zach Johnson, and I'm here to represent the boys basketball program and student athletes who have built a lifestyle and sacrifice to represent the River Falls community. I know I don't play a fall sport, but along with a couple of my teammates and myself, we've been playing organized basketball since the end of June. I wanted to share my experience to you and how they organize the events. The tournaments we played in were strictly run. Each team was able to have limited spectators ranging from 12 to 20 people. Tickets were sold in advance online, so there was no cash exchange in person. Players and spectators had to wait outside till their game time was called. When they called us in, they checked our temperatures and had to wear a mask into the building until we reached our bench. Staff sanitized the bench and bleachers in between games, and during the game, spectators were socially distanced and were required to wear a mask at all times in the building. Then immediately following our games, our team and spectators had to leave the building. We played in places such as Minneapolis, St. Paul, Wisconsin Dells, Milwaukee, and Appleton, with opponents from various places within the Midwest. My team and spectators have remained safe and have been healthy throughout the process. As a senior, it was important for me to finish the summer season with guys I've been playing with since the 6th grade. We would like that to continue for this upcoming high school season, and as a senior class, the 7 of us have made goals for ourselves and as a team this year. We would like that opportunity to achieve them and hope you would like to take that into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Zach.
Hello, my name is Alex Mashesky, and I'm a senior on the football team. First off, I would just like to say thank you to the school board and Superintendent Benson for allowing me to speak on behalf of our football family. Also, I would like to thank school staff for getting us to this point in the discussion. And finally, I want to thank all of our coaches for the hard work that they've done in order for us to have a fall season. The players, coaches, and parents all want a fall season. Almost all the football players, as well as many of the volleyball and soccer athletes, have been going to ETS all summer. That's over 240 athletes that have been participating in ETS. We've been safe, not reckless. There's not been a single COVID case from working out at ETS due to our efforts to stay safe. We know the risk involved just as well as we know the measures to help reduce that risk. Many of us have missed at least one sports season so far. We missed the chance to compete at a high level, but most importantly, we miss our teammates and our classmates. While school is extremely important, so is our involvement in sports. For many, sports is a way to get away from the daily stresses at home and at school. We don't see spring season as an option. Other sports conflict with the alternate WIA spring schedule, and our team would be gutted, as many of our best players have to choose between a normal spring season and a makeshift spring football season. Even if they didn't have to choose and could do both, the struggle of doing 2 sports and then going home to hours of homework would be very stressful. We've done everything within our power to get ourselves ready for the fall season. The coaches and administrators have worked hard to make it happen. Please don't take that away from us. Thank you for your time tonight.
Hi, my name is Dalen Wold, and I want to take a step away from the board itself and speak to you as a member of our marching band. Our marching band this summer has been practicing for a couple months, and we've been able to maintain safe practices, social distancing, and wearing a mask. So what we ask of you, and from the season that we've already lost, is that you allow us to continue having practices with one another, to be able to feed our own legacy, and continue moving forward for future marching band seasons to come. It's been very difficult, and I know for fall athletes, it's even harder of a challenge, but we just ask that you understand that we, as students and as members of the community, are working and trying our best to maintain our safe practices, social distancing, and mask wearing so that we are able to enjoy the things that we love this fall season and moving on to the winter and spring season. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to address the board? All right, then we are going to move on to informational items. And the first one regards fall sports. And I would call on Mr. Raleigh Hall for a presentation, please.
this week, I'm just talking safety procedures that we're putting through for fall athletics. Basically, the three high-risk ones, but they kind of fall into place for everything, including marching band. But we'll just start it here, if I can. There we go. A lot of things we're doing, we're adding a lot. Hand sanitizer. We're not buying it by the bottle, we're buying it by the gallon. We have pump bottles all over the place. Back of the entrance, by the pool, weight room, locker rooms, tennis court, out in the track. We expect our kids to use it. We got a lot of them out there, so they're not standing in long lines to use them. It's very important that we have this. Disinfected wipes. We have them in the weight room, wipe down after every use. That's been going on all summer. Swimming pool, we'll wipe down the starting block handles as they get in and out of the pool. We'll wipe down soccer balls, volleyballs, footballs during play. Spray. We'll spray any equipment that has been touched. Examples would be diving boards, tennis balls, football bags, all practice and game balls at the end of events. Just some examples. The spray can be just sprayed on and left. Also would be shoulder pads, helmets, that kind of things. A typical practice. Typical practice will be the kids, and they've been doing that already this summer, they'll wear a mask when entering the building and when leaving the area. If they stay in the building, it's on the whole time. They'll use hand sanitizer. They'll work in pods. Might be positions, might be grade, so on. They'll use hand sanitizer anytime they have contact. They'll maintain social distancing when not in drills. It's going to be really important that they stay away from each other. They're teenagers, they like to be by each other. Everybody likes to be by some. Heck, I had to tell a board member and an administrator 10 minutes ago, distance, distance, all right? And that's going to be a popular word. And then use hand sanitizer when leaving practice. Common expectations. We expect all participants will have a face covering of some kind. Might be a cloth mask, might be a gaiter, might be a splash guard. I'll go into that a little bit more later. These will be worn indoors, and anytime they are within 6 feet of someone outdoors. Everyone has to bring their own water bottle and towel. We are not buying water bottles. We did that one time in middle school, and we bought a bunch of them, and they were all the same. So water break, everybody ran over to it, and they didn't know which one was theirs. It's better. They will be colorful, okay? Everybody have your own water bottle. Go get it. The water fountains are shut off, but the bottle fillers are still on, so they can still fill up their water. We will keep attendance daily. We'll do daily health checks. It's a questionnaire. We do expect parents to take temperatures at home just like they do for school. Arrive late, leave immediately. That doesn't mean you're late for practice, but we want you to get there as close to the beginning of practice as possible. We don't want them to be there an hour ahead of time and just hanging around. You're just there for the time that you have to be there, then you leave immediately. And then we'll learn the word distance. We'll use it as a positive, not as a negative. And coaches, I'm telling them, use a word anytime they're around each other. You're gonna learn how to live out of a gym bag, all right? There'll be no to very little locker room access. If anything, you might get in there to change. You're not gonna have a locker. Go in there, change, put your other clothes in your bag, take the bag out with you. And then when practice is done, you go home. You won't even have to come back in the locker room. You'll take the clothing home daily, hopefully wash it. We'll count on our parents for that, I'm sure, even though you can certainly teach these children how to do it. You'll carry a towel, and we suggest a bottle of sanitizer in that bag. Then we gotta change some habits. Number one, no spitting, all right, and that is a big one. You even see that. I watched the baseball game, Twins game last night. right up on their dugout. No spitting, no seeds, no gum. We don't want that. No touching the face. Handshakes, high fives, fist bumps should all be eliminated. Invent some new celebrations, all right? We'll leave that up to you guys. We don't want to show off or show up the other team, but baseball players, I see they're bumping their helmets. Take the helmets off, bump that up in the air. Kick each other. I don't know what you're going to do. You figure it out. Something new. Meetings. Crail for football, I know, gets 97 kids into his classroom for film sessions. We're not going to have those anymore. We'll either do them in here, Commons, library, somewhere with a little bigger area. We'll space them out. We'll make sure they're masked. We'll do it virtually if we have to. They do have something called Huddle. We just expanded our Huddle, which is an online video, hardware, software, whatever you call it, that people can watch at home, kids can watch at home. A lot of these kids in here right now are already using this. We've said no preseason in-person meetings with the parents. Do them either virtually or with hard copies. Locker rooms, as I said, they will be used only sparingly to change quickly. No equipment, even the football, I have an idea. I got to talk to our buildings and grounds yet, where we will not have to store that inside the locker room. There'll be no showers. We'll limit the number that can be allowed at one time, usually less than 10 per room. One exception to this would probably be swimming. They have to change in there. I should go back to that. That is one sport that doesn't need a locker room. Also, when we play an opponent, they're going to come dressed just like we will come dressed for games that are away. So there's no need for a locker room for the opponent. Training room, we'll work with Alina on these rules. Already have done that. One athlete will be in there at a time. You'll wait at floor markings that are on the floor or will be on the floor that are distanced, just like going to a grocery store, Fleet Farm, somewhere else. You'll stay at the foot mark, move up when it's open. You'll come in the door by the gym, you go out the hallway door. No other athletes are allowed. The trainer will refill the bed kits, so coaches don't have to go in there, players don't have to go in there, should never go in there to get anything. And then if we do need extra room and there are injuries, we'll have tables set up in the back of the Ox gym, and we can do the rehab back there. It's a much bigger area. This year we will have no student trainers, just like we won't have any student managers, anything else. We're just doing the essential. The athletic hallway, I will be honest with you, is one of my concerns, and it's about a 15-minute concern, but it's that time right after school, and I think all teachers are, administrators are concerned about hallways. It's very crowded. Obviously, everyone's coming down to practice. We'll give teams time periods to use the locker rooms. It'll be by the week, all right? We'll spread out those times, start times, so practice might start later for some teams. We might use other areas to change, as they have the gym bag with them. Maybe the cross-country team can go change in a classroom somewhere. We have to arrange some of those things. Those haven't all been worked out, but we have an idea. Those would be some examples. Students will wait in the commons until it's time to go. We'll have some directions on how they should do that. Sit at tables, a couple at a table, not more than a couple. We'll spread out practice. It will mean more early and late practices. In the gym, I know I've already talked to Coach Cayley. 2 of the teams may practice right after school. The other 2 teams would practice an hour and a half, 2 hours later. Transportation, we're going to limit it to 1 person per seat for activities, 24 max per bus. Trips are longer than normal, so we want to spread them out more. All will wear masks. Parents will be allowed to transport their own child. That has not been the case before without special permission. A couple things we do want is we want to know the day before. We're going to make them follow or ask them to follow the bus to the location to be sure that they get to the right spot on time. Just because it's a 7 o'clock volleyball game doesn't mean we want them there at 6:55. They have to warm up and so on. One thing that's very important, them driving them does not guarantee that they will be able to enter as a spectator. Some of those rules are still need to be in place too, and that might be different from school to school. Suburban use will only be for coaches to transport equipment. We'll have one coach per vehicle. Okay? Attendance. Basically 3 choices. No fans, limited fans, and unlimited fans. Well, the first and the third ones are pretty easy to figure out, all right? So I'm not going to talk about either one of them. Limited fans. If this is the case, I don't see us being unlimited. We could have no fans, or we could have limited. We'll limit it to parents only for the kids that are dressed for the game. No admission charge. Masks have to be worn at all events. We have to do lists, all right? For public health reasons, we have to know who's at these games. We also have to know where they're sitting. So this will be some things that we'll have to work out. Locations will be designated for seating. Supervisors will direct fans to their seats. Entrances, exits will be spread out. Spectators will only stay for the game their child participates in. An example of that would be the JV varsity soccer play back-to-back. If you're a parent of a JV player, we'll ask that you leave after the JV game is done, and that the varsity parents don't come until the varsity game starts. And then all will leave immediately after the game. No meeting athletes on the field or the court. All right? If you've ever been to one of our football games, game gets done at 10 to 10 and we get off the field at 10:30 because parents like to go out and it's a nice time. We're going to eliminate that for now. A major issue is the concept of congregating before and after games. Parents and others will be asked, I was going to underline asked and I didn't, asked, and I should say nicely, to not have pregame tailgate get-togethers as well as no post-game parties unless they're family only. We just ask that. Live streaming. If we have limited attendance, we're going to attempt to live stream or tape delay all events that we can, including lower levels that usually don't get filmed. We can do it on the normal YouTube that you watch now, or on Huddle, you can watch it tape delayed. They're all free to the viewer. Some of them you might need a password. Works for volleyball, football, soccer, and swimming. Does not work for golf, tennis, and cross country. I'll be very honest. Those sports, parents are probably going to be able to attend anyway, regardless, because it's very limited. Attendees, the WIA came out with, kind of a tier thing, and we went with it, and we've added something. Consider grouping people into tiers from essential to non-essential. Tier 1, essential. These are the people that have to be there in order to play the game. Coaches, athletes, officials, event staff, medical staff, security. Tier 2 would be media. All right, that would include those streaming people, Bob Burrows, so on. Not essential, they ain't gonna like it, but spectators, concessions, we won't have any concessions, student workers, those would be considered non-essential. Others, these groups will be evaluated on whether they will be allowed in football games. Cheerleaders, dance team, marching band, they're all really a part of a home football game, I'll be honest with you. Our cheerleaders have gotten very good. Our dance team has really improved over the years. Our marching band, we don't even have to say how good they are. But it increases the number of people that are at the activity. If they are no longer allowed in, that's to be decided, we're going to find every opportunity to find some time that they can perform to an audience also. TBD. I can't really tell you what that would be. Couple of individual sport modifications. Volleyball, they can play with face masks. I've been assured of that by the coach and others. We'll spread out the benches either wider or we'll go too deep. We won't switch sides during the game. Usually you play one here and then you switch over and the whole bench switches. No, we'll always stay on the same side. We'll split the night's games to limit attendees. If we're playing Chippewa Falls, varsity and JV might be playing here. JV2 and freshmen will go to Chippewa Falls. This is something we're still trying to figure this out because I Googled this. I heard about this and I haven't found one of these, but there's a suggestion to put a clear plastic sheet at the net. Again, that's the only time really players from the opposing teams are against each other. That might stop some plus with the mask. All right, soccer, not a whole lot of changes other than that whole bunch of things I said before, but players will wear gaiters. They can pull them down when they're by themselves on a field. Usually for soccer, they're both on the same sideline. We will now bring one to each sideline. All right, so they'll spread out that way. We'll have our ball chasers, hopefully who will be adults, will wipe down the ball with disinfectant throughout the game. And that's true in volleyball also. We'll have a number of balls available and we'll wipe them down, kind of rotate them through. Football, I gotta get my Big Rivers Conference has all agreed to wear some kind of a face mask or face shield during football games. This is one of them. They're called splash guards, I miss a P. Splash guards, not slash guards, on the face mask. And what you can see, they're all clear, but just to show you what they are, they change the color a little bit. The green part is a visor that goes over the eyes. Some players wear them now. Some don't. Right now you're gonna have to wear one. The purple part is a new thing put out by this company that will cover the mouth, okay? So now we'll have the whole face shield completely covered, all right? Is the bottom open yet? Yes, it is. But that does cover most of the face down below the chin. The face mask is supposed to go under the chin when they do their sizing. So this whole part will be covered. These are approved by the WIAA. As with everything, people are figuring out how to make money while also providing a service. There were some other things. We thought this was the best for us. Some other things, masks for meetings, transitions, transportation. So even though they have this, they're still gonna have to have a mask available, all right? If a kid or parents want them to also wear a mask with this, certainly it's okay. Linemen will work with bags instead of other players, you know, the big dummies or whatever. Position groups will stay together as much as possible. We'll limit drills to 10 minutes. We'll have extra mouth guards available. We're gonna try to keep them in their mouth. However, I know sometimes they spit them out or whatever. If they do that, they need to go hand sanitize because now they've touched that. Sidelines will also be extended. Usually we go from the 25-yard line, 25, now we'll go 10 to 10. So we can spread out the team much more on the sideline. And we will disinfect helmets and shoulder pads after practices. Kids will take home the rest of their equipment. We'll disinfect these. I just listed coaches. As I get stuff, I've been sending it to coaches. We've talked, had a lot of conversations. This is just some of the groups that we've gotten information from. I've had some preseason meetings with the coaches that have already started. I'll have with my other 3 coming up here, and we'll go over expectations, not only the head coach, but the assistant coaches as well. Parents, I've sent out newsletters, we'll continue newsletters, information before the first game. Tomorrow we have our first events. We got girls golf in Rice Lake tomorrow morning, and Chippewa Falls tennis in the afternoon. Both set of parents have gotten letters kind of outlining expectations for them as well as for the kids. Then finally, whatever the decision, we'll do what we can to provide the best, safest environment. We need 100% assistance from everyone. And that final thing is traditions are out the door this year. All right, they're out of play. We're making our own traditions, our own memories. If we go on with this, we can never say, well, that's the way we have always done it, because this is not that year. So, with that said, any questions you have here or on the document I sent you last night? I know it was lengthy. Todd.
Just one random question. I don't remember that this came up last week, but do we have a good feel for what the commitment is in terms of referees and officials for all of these events? I'm just curious in that regard.
We had them all filled for the fall. We've had some that backed out, usually elderly, but not all. I have not done the JV ones yet because those are all changed. I was waiting until after tonight. And then with the varsity for these 3 sports, we just redid the schedule. So Tom Fiedler, our commissioner, he does the conference games. And I saw he's got them all filled. So now I'll go and try to fill the other ones. We have some traditional issues anyway, you know, with some of our sports finding officials. I have not personally heard of, take that back, one person I've heard that didn't want to do it. That was a cross-country person. We don't host any cross-country this year, so. Al.
Raleigh, this is good information. I think that as we look through this, I think these are reasonable, that things that our players can adhere to, and I'm sure will. Do we have any kind of certainty or guarantee that the teams that we're going to play might be as conscientious as our players are going to be and following rules similar to this? Because if we are and they aren't, there obviously is going to be a problem.
Their athletic directors are a lot nicer than our athletic director is, I know that. I can tell you, and I show you on my phone, we talk hourly, daily, all summer. And we go through everything that I put up there, all of us have talked about and said, we want to be as close together as we can, because it's a lot easier for me to explain to these people, well, this is the way we're doing it, and everyone in the conference is doing it that way. Instead of hearing, well, they can do this in wherever. Will there be some changes? Yeah, some small ones, I'm sure. One I talked about was attendance. A lot of that's going to be decided on county rules. I believe the ones that we're playing this year will be very conscientious. Can I say they'll be as good as our kids, who are going to be perfect, will be? We got the perfect ones. So, everything's going to be, there's always going to be an outlier. I hate to say that. So,
I think you said this about there's a match going on tomorrow morning, but was there a report or a COVID status from that particular city or location given to our coach here? Is that what, or I didn't know if I heard that correctly or not.
I have not given out one. No, okay. We're in contact, kind of the same thing. If they get called off, they would tell us.
Okay.
One thing we've done is we've tried to keep common opponents for a week. We can't do it with everything, but using volleyball and soccer as an example. We're going to play each team twice during the year, but we're going to do it in 1 week. So like volleyball, for the most part, would be playing the same school on Monday and Thursday. that keeps our conversation smaller to how many different athletic directors we have to get a hold of. It also limits the number of people that our people will be facing in a week's time. All right, we're not doing a lot of different, then if it comes to tracing, we would have to backtrack more. We all understand that a couple cases might shut it down, and we know that from school to school.
Thanks, Raleigh.
Yep. Mike.
Raleigh, thanks for all this information and all the detail and all the planning. And thanks for all the students who are here. That really speaks very highly of your passion for this and your integrity, and I appreciate it. The quick question I have is, can you just remind us of the status of other teams? Meaning, how many other teams do we know will be able to play?
In our conference, the Eau Claire schools, the Eau Claire schools left. All right, they went to the spring.
Right. So
We have 7 teams in our conference. Superior plays in a couple of sports, including football. Superior left in football and volleyball only. They matched what Minnesota did so that they can still play the Minnesota schools and everything else. All right, either this fall or in the spring. Eau Claire left with everything.
So
Most of the other schools in this area, so middle border schools, Dunn St. Croix, I don't know of any other school in this immediate area that has left. I think I'm accurate with that. You know, Baldwin, Prescott, Ellsworth, Somerset, they're still going this fall, as far as I know. Jamie, you've had some meetings, I think that's accurate.
I too have been in frequent conversation with area superintendents, and I would concur with Raleigh. So in our conference, Big Rivers Conference, remaining would be Menominee and Rice Lake and Chippewa Falls and Hudson and us. There's several board meetings going on tonight at these various school districts, including Prescott in a half circle all the way up through Hudson. And in all of the communication that I've had with those area superintendents, they have a similar item on their agenda tonight. I don't want to speak for them, but I can say that all have the intention of moving forward with all fall sports. I can't say what's going to happen at their board meeting tonight, but that is their intention. So when I talk about a half circle, I start at Prescott, I go to Ellsworth, Spring Valley, Baldwin, St. Croix Central, Somerset, New Richmond, Hudson, Osceola. They all intend to move forward.
So within our conference, there's 5?
Correct.
Correct.
And then, assuming they all move, those other 4 move forward?
Yes.
There's 5, okay, thanks.
And how about football, Raleigh?
Say what?
How about football?
We'll be all right in football, I think. We've done a schedule now. We have 4 games scheduled, and that's just for the first 5 weeks. We can play 2 more weeks. We're waiting for those last 2 weeks. We'll try to pair up teams similarly, all right? So maybe we'll have the first place teams, the 2 highest place teams play in a week or something like that. So I'm assuming we'll get up to 6 weeks of games. I will say that there were a couple of schools in the next conference to the east, the Wisconsin Valley, where some of those schools did leave. Some of them have requested whether we want to play them in some football games. That would be Marshfield, Wisconsin, Rapids. We have not taken that up yet. Stacy.
I have a question, Raleigh, and that's about symptoms and monitoring symptoms of any kind of illness in our athletes. And then if a family member in an athlete's home should already be quarantined or has symptoms, what the expectation and what the enforcement would be.
I know they came out with some things last week. Jamie can share with that too. The WIAA, and I think it was the last couple pages that I gave you last night, has specific things if you test positive, okay, you're out for 10 days, you don't come back till you have a positive, or you test negative. No, positive, unless you have a negative test, you know, blah, blah, blah. If you're presumed, same kind of a deal. If you're around someone, it's actually 14 days that you have to self-quarantine. And in order to get back, you'd have to have a negative test, or else have something filled out by a doctor. And, you know, as far as how that branches out to other quarantines, I know Jamie had some discussions. I don't know, Jamie, if you can help me out with that as far as...
Yeah, so I had sent a letter home to parents today regarding new guidance that came from the State Department of Health Services. They issued this new guidance just last Wednesday afternoon. And so, in a nutshell, just to be brief, the new piece, a lot of what they were saying is similar to the past, but there's a significant new piece that calls for siblings and household members would be excluded from school until the symptomatic person either tests negative, or if that symptomatic person is not tested, then all of the household contacts would remain out of school for 14 days. So that's a pretty significant change from the guidance that existed prior to last Wednesday afternoon.
And Jamie, what would it mean for the parents of those students?
Well, they would be...
Probably be quarantined as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I got a question, Stacy. Raleigh, what are the other schools doing? So what did Eau Claire do? What are the other schools doing are they cohorting? Everybody's 100% back? The school, not the sport.
That's above my pay scale, but I know Eau Claire was doing what we're doing. I believe Hudson, Menominee, Rice Lake, and Chip are all 5-day. I believe the other 4 are 5 days. I'm not sure on the middle border. I really don't.
Ellsworth, Spring Valley,
Was Prescott?
Baldwin, St. Croix Central, Somerset, Osceola, New Richmond, Hudson. They're all coming back with all students.
Was Prescott? I can't remember. Were they able?
Prescott, I heard a rumor today, I don't know. They were originally coming back full, and I was told, but have not confirmed, if they're going to a hybrid model. And if so, what that hybrid looks like, if it's the same as ours or not, I don't know.
So Jamie, with the exception of Prescott, all those other schools are coming back 5 days a week
Correct.
for high school age students, okay.
But not Eau Claire, right? Eau Claire's doing what we're doing 2 days.
Correct.
So everybody that we would be playing is back
5 days a week.
5 days a week, and the teams that have other spacing or mitigating things at the school have decided to wait till spring. Basically.
Correct. I don't know their reasoning, but yes, correct. They went to spring.
That which other schools are waiting till spring?
Well, Eau Claire
Just the
decides
two
Superior.
Eau Claire schools, yes.
Eau Claire Superior, do you know what lacrosse is doing? The area by any, just.
The 2 lacrosse schools have gone to the spring. The rest of them, some of them are having meetings tonight. Lacrosse was all virtual in there, and that's for the 2 public schools, not Aquinas. Aquinas is back 5 days. Holman on Alaska, they're still to be determined.
You mentioned this earlier about the hallway by the locker rooms. I see that as a real bottleneck. Did you mention like staging?
Yes.
As far as after?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We'll give them time schedules and expect them more. You know, there's things we can do. Tennis players can go out the science wing, get right to their court if they keep their racket in their regular locker. I don't even know if have that available, but with them. Um, you know, everybody can be a little bit different, but there's gonna be some where we're gonna have to wait, and then let them out in groups.
Sure. If we vote to go ahead with this, at what point would we decide as far as fan and attendance issues, or should we leave it up to the?
I would say that'll be the next discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we had talked about it tonight, but I think that's got to be looked at, talked with public health and everybody else a little bit more. I will say we're kind of across the board on that issue with the big rivers.
Sure.
We're still trying to figure that out.
The last one I have is, we talked about athletics in this particular venue, but would band fall into this purview as well? I mean, as far as the
Yeah,
precautionary measures?
right now, and I just talked to Mr. Jekyll, a lot of their events have been postponed for marching band, pending, you know, other things. I know he had talked about some virtual meets at some time, you know, or just setting it up on a night where they could be out here by themselves with the parents watching or something like that. They have the same issues that we do.
Yeah.
They're, you know, if you remember, we're not doing big multi-team events. Marching band competitions are multi-team, and my daughter used to be in it. There's thousands of people there, and there's 1,000 people there just with the bands. So that's an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Raleigh, though, I think the band it's a good issue because, for example, let's just say the conference had canceled the football program for this fall. I suspect that we would have had an activity that would have engaged our football players in a whole variety of things this fall in lieu of that, right? I mean, if the conference had said no football, we would have had some physical activities, maybe some scrimmages, all those kinds of things. I think, and I would hope to hear soon that we've facilitated that same kind of arrangement for marching band.
Well, one thing remember with marching band is it's also a class, so it would continue to meet whenever it was going to meet, as is during the day. And like I said, we would try to set up some kind of nights or, you know, shows that they could put on.
It's a big activity. It's over 100 kids.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
bigger than any sport.
And it's been a great activity, and we're damn good at it too, if I might add.
Raleigh, about how many athletes are we talking about in these three sports? Just a guess.
In these three sports,
Yeah, in football, soccer, and volleyball.
180,
180 total?
about. Our numbers have been down just a touch this year, not much so. And we're not all signed up yet for those three sports. When I said the numbers, I'm speaking of the other sports.
And the 180 are split, there are some in each cohort, right? The Monday, Tuesday, in A and B.
As I understand it, yes.
So I'm concerned about the crossing of the cohorts, right? And doing what's good for 18% of our students and the impact it has on the other 82% of students in the school. I can live with the 180 kids playing sports. I completely get it, right? Sports has been my whole career. But the 82% of our kids don't have a choice of having cross cohorts. That's what I worry about. Do you have any great answers for that? I'm hoping you say yes.
It was discussed. It was brought up. I know when they did the scheduling, there was concerns about how it would fit together, you know, with families and everything else. And I believe the actual scheduling of it was going to be very tough. I don't know, is Kit here? Help me out here, buddy.
Raleigh, oh, sorry. I'll wait, sorry.
Go ahead, Kit.
Would you like to respond?
think to me, the other notable is if we would create the Monday, Tuesday group of athletes only and the Thursday, Friday group differently, so we'd have 180 kids come to school on Monday, Tuesday. And that would leave how many coming to school on Thursday, Friday? So for me, I can understand the concern that if we're in a hybrid, aren't we messing with the hybrid by allowing athletic participation after school? I would say to some extent I can appreciate the argument. Hence, in large part, we wanted to display the safety mitigation efforts that we're going to employ after school. And I would also remind everyone of the importance that we have understood for the last couple of months related to any and all mitigation efforts, and that is that it's a comprehensive list of mitigation efforts that we have to employ. It's not any one thing. It's not a hybrid approach for 7th through 12th grade alone that we're employing. We were ahead of the pack in making commitments that masking is a requirement. We have been working very hard to create as much distance as we can, but we've also been very transparent to say, I think people realize we're also messing with our efforts. Let's talk about the bus ride to school in the morning. What kind of a hybrid approach is going on there? Not much. We're going to have them wear a mask. We're going to have assigned seats. We're going to do our best as we can with mitigation efforts across the board. What are we going to have in some of our elementary classrooms? Class sizes now, due to several students exiting out into the virtual e-school, fortunately, we'll have some smaller class sizes at our elementary school, but let's say you still have 20 kids in a 900 square foot room with furniture and desks and computers and so on. We've been transparent to say we won't be accomplishing 6 feet distance between all of those kids all throughout the day. We're making efforts at lunchtime to do our best to create distancing, but it's not going to be perfect. And so I guess I'm just adding to this conversation to suggest that it's about the comprehensive approach that we need to take to mitigation. I would not refute that the hybrid concept at the high school, if we're messing with that by having after-school participation, to some extent there's certainly truth to that, just as there's truth to many of the other mitigation efforts that we are employing that are not completely flawless either.
Can I add too, I can't speak for the teachers or the people who do the scheduling, but going back to what happened with the 6th grade where the cohort was going to be, I can't remember the exact number, say 110 kids for 6 gold and 6 blue. They were able to figure out classes that were, so they moved in groups, and I think we figured it was down to high 20s or low 30s. I have to think if 5 of the kids on the volleyball team were together at a meet the other night, 3 of those kids might be in 2 of the same classes. And if you're sitting, in their seating charts, I would think it wouldn't take a whole lot some creativity to put that together to say, you might be in cohort B, you might have no involvement with athletics, but I would think it's realistic to say that there'd be no reason for you to need to come in within 20 feet of the 4 or 5 kids that were on the volleyball court the night before either, if seating could be arranged that way once you're inside the classrooms or when it comes to lunches or buses, whatever it might be. And again, that would take a little bit of extra work, but I think those kids are generally probably the closer friends anyway, and I would think they would maybe voluntarily offer that too if given the chance in terms of seating once you get into the class.
Raleigh, what does it cost? What does it cost to go to spring? Not financial cost, but what do we lose if we shift to spring, the fall sports?
Field availability in March, I would say, would be hard for outdoor sports. Sorry, I'm fogging up. Financially, really no difference that I can see. Might even be less because there won't be as many tournaments in the spring. WIA tournaments, they've already said they'll be very limited. Other than that, it'll be pretty similar, at least on paper.
You'd lose games for sure, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would lose some, you would lose, in theory, each week is about the same. If we go to the spring right now as is, actually some of our transportation will go up because of schools that are local are not. I just, like I said, my phone's buzzing here. Both Menominee and Hudson are going to go in the fall for sure now. The spring we would probably have to do more travel. Other than that, they're supposed to be similar. I don't know. It's a crapshoot, to be honest with you. I'd say the hardest thing right now would be, most of these are supposed to start early March. You know what our weather is like in Wisconsin. It would be really hard to get out there, which means then we're practicing indoors, which this is one thing that I think is better in the fall, is I'm really trying to stay neutral, but one thing in the fall is our fall outdoor sports can go outside, which is safer. If we go to the spring, they're going to start with a lot of indoor practices. And there's nothing to say that it's going to be better in the spring.
Mr. Lickey, did you want to?
You will also have potential overlap for multi-sport athletes of over 5 weeks. So a student who plays football and baseball, or like my son who plays golf and soccer, they'll have to basically choose one sport over the other or potentially play both, which again may or may not be healthy if they can't make both sets of practices. The other thing that I will just talk from a parent perspective is there are a lot of club sports that are out there, whether it's volleyball, soccer, or others, that again, if these young men and women may not be able to play in the fall, we might be sending them to club level sports irregardless, that parents may make that choice. My fear personally is that we move it away from high school athletics and we may not get some of those kids back, just working and playing in our own conference and within our own high school is an important part of culture and climate.
So I have a question. One thing that we haven't really addressed yet today is just COVID itself. And if we want to look at the numbers and just go by the numbers, and I think right now in Pierce County, it's pretty low, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna.
What are the numbers right now?
A part of what I'm going to present when we get to this action item later will include what I think is a pretty comprehensive overview of what the COVID numbers look like. If we can just wait on that.
So that everybody understands how the agenda is working today, this is now being presented as an update so that we have information about the safety measures relative to fall sports. My suggestion is that we break our conversation now, that we move on to the rest of the informational items, because when we come to the time for potential action, I know that Mr. Benson has a presentation he would like to give, but it also affords the board to have more opportunity for discussion. Would that be acceptable?
Yeah, I was going to ask Stacy, just for the sake of, I think, majority of the people who are here, I don't know how long we expect B, C, and D to take on the update, but if we're looking at another hour on some of those items, is it fair to say maybe we could jump to that action item now? I want to try to be respectful to them too.
Absolutely. So how about, Mr. Benson, if you give your presentation now, and what we will do then is we will jump to action item letter B. Thank you for the suggestion, Todd.
I'll try it from here. So, again, the administration is, as per the board agenda, is formally seeking board approval for all fall sports to continue. And so, just put together a couple of talking points. Again, as we've repeatedly said, I guess I'm the one that likes this little phrase, there's two sides of the same coin. We all know what this debate is about. It's about the COVID risks to our students and our staff and our community versus the social, emotional, physical well-being of our students. We need to understand what the safety measures would be, and I think Raleigh just did a very nice job of giving an overview on that. If we were to proceed with sports, I threw this slide in to just to ask the question, if we say no to this now, then what? And so I listed a few questions underneath. I'll avoid commentary, but these are things that I think are part of the equation. We say no now. Will the COVID numbers improve significantly for winter? Everything that I hear from the experts would say don't count on significant improvement. Which schools will we play in the spring is a question mark. If all those schools that I just mentioned in that more than a half circle do proceed playing this fall, who would we play? Will students find other quote-unquote things to do this fall? Mr. Litke mentioned they may still continue to participate in club sports. I would worry that we might be creating a door of opportunity for some other less than desirable choices that might be made. Maybe we should wait for a vaccine and wait for this whole COVID thing to go away. When will that be? Everything I hear and read, we might have something in place the first part of the year. That means a vaccine might be in place the first part of the year. How long would it take for that to take full effect on our overall society? And so again, we're back to balancing the risks versus the rewards. So to Amy's question, I put together a couple of things. This first slide, a quick fact, is we've talked about this at the board level in the past, that there's this Minnesota model, and we've been careful as a district to say, well, we don't want to necessarily just put our decision on this one model, but as long as we've talked about it in the past, I wanted to point out where we would be at if, in fact, we plugged in our two county areas within this model, and it would show that in both cases we'd be either in-person learning at 9.8 or arguably in-person learning for elementary and hybrid for secondary, which is exactly where we are at. Quick fact number two, I asked A.Z. Snyder, our county director at DHS, what would cause you at the DHS to shut us down as a school district? What would close our doors? And she indicated that burden, it's a mathematical formula, the burden would have to be at 350 per every 100,000 people in our county. And currently we're at 168, so she's not closing us down. The second thing that would cause her to close us down would be contact tracing got out of hand, and she and her department could not even keep up with the pace of the spread to isolate those that are needed. So quick fact number three, public health staff is available. They are able to contact all newly identified cases within 24 hours. They're able to contact all newly identified close contacts. Regional health care, public health capacity is good. And again, I did speak today with Pierce County, and there's no recommended change for another vote on our agenda to our hybrid learning environment. She certainly did express concerns with football, soccer, and volleyball moving forward, and I shared her comment with the board through an email today. And not to ever be perceived as minimizing the risks associated with COVID. People die from COVID, and we understand that. And we can't just say, I don't personally believe that we should just say, well, yeah, but if you look at the COVID numbers, it's an extremely small percent of students age 0 to 19, high school athletics comes to mind. It's a very small percent of those people that become ill. Well, that's not the whole issue. It's the spread to others that is also a part of that consideration. Quick fact number 4, when you look at the trajectory of our 2-county area, I put up here Pierce County, the trajectory is down. And in St. Croix, the trajectory, they show it as no change. The good news is it's not on the rise. Trajectory is, again, I put on the slide at the top there, trajectory is stable in both counties, and trajectory is the percent of change from the previous to the current week. So it's looking at 1 week prior compared to the next week. And if you have a trajectory that continues to climb, that's an ugly sign. That's not the case currently in our 2-county area. Pierce County, they call this active/probable cases. The definition of that is you've either tested positive or you've been in contact with a positive case and you are experiencing symptoms. And so some people, when they've been in close contact with COVID, they may choose to not, with a test positive COVID case, they may choose to not get the test. They're feeling the symptoms. They're assuming that that's probably what they have. And so the county includes those people in these numbers. So I put up the last month's worth, 4 different weeks to look at what's the total percent of the number of COVID cases compared to our entire 43,000 population in our county. And so the last week up there, dated 8/22, August 22nd, the number that represents in comparison to our total population is 0.0014 of our population is currently active or probable cases. Another look at COVID rates per 100,000 people. As long as Benson was taking the time to look at that, what's the condition in other parts of the state? I had recently heard that Dane County DHS shut down their schools. I think they're all now distance learning, and I believe that means none of them will be playing sports. And so Dane County, their COVID positive rate is higher. You can see on the screen. We've all heard from the Kenosha, Milwaukee, Racine area on up to the Fox Valley, numbers are worse there. Statewide, the number is 1,226. At the bottom of the slide, I listed our 2-county average, 661. So, to be clear, this would be a fluid decision if the board chooses to go ahead with a vote to move forward with COVID, but we also want to be clear that this is a fluid decision. Given our current understanding of COVID risks versus the advantages, we are recommending the board moves forward with all fall sports. We'll continue to work with the DHS, with our players and coaches, to be sure that we are taking every safety measure very seriously. And then lastly, if the board does approve this proposal tonight, everybody should understand that this too could change in a matter of days or in a matter of weeks. Local community and regional COVID spread will determine this, along with many other decisions moving forward.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? This is the chance for us to be able to discuss the potential motion and the administrative recommendation.
Just a couple of questions for you, Jamie. You talked about trajectory being stable, but you just cited 1 week. And I think it's worth pointing out that really the last 7 out of 9 weeks have been up in Pierce County. I don't think our public health officials would say it's stable. I think they would say it's quite high right now.
Yeah, the term stable is my word. I didn't pull that off of their website at all. I did pull this. This is a slide from the state website where I would encourage you to go there to read for yourself what they say there for the trajectory.
Yeah, I'm not questioning what they say. I'm just saying, I just think it's probably pertinent to consider more than 1 week. And the last week in our county was up again. So, and you alluded to the guidance from AZ Schneider, and I think it's worth making sure we're kind of reminded that she does not recommend going forward with sports.
Correct.
I think that was only in regard to 3 specific sports, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are the only 3 we're talking about though, right? The
Okay.
others are already
That's right.
going forward.
Yes.
Although it's probably important to be noted that she's looking at just the COVID numbers, not diminishing COVID, but she's not looking at all the other things that go along with fall sports and activities as well, which we talk about the mental health of our students. And I think fall sports and activities is all part of that, for having positive mental health and an outlet and being a part of a team and all of that. So we need to kind of look at the whole picture and not just a tiny part of it.
Yeah, to add on to that, Amy, I don't know how much AZ Snyder knows about the mitigation standards or mitigation effects, or I should say processes, Raleigh and the coaches will be put into place. I don't know, but I would think that she would have a favorable outlook on the items that Raleigh discussed tonight. So maybe she's just looking at the core fact that you may have contact if you're playing volleyball. You may have contact if you're playing football, that type of thing. But is she aware of the shields, the masks, the gaiters, all the other precautions and mitigation things we've done or will be doing to carry athletics forward? I don't know. So in other words, I think if she was aware of that, maybe she would change her mind, maybe not.
And the other positive thing that I think of, I kind of liken it to going hybrid, right? We can pivot at any point. So I think that we have to look at fall sports and activities the same way, that we can pivot at any point. If we have all these mitigation strategies in place, we can take a look at it, or administration can take a look at it, and if it's working, great, let's keep doing what we're doing. If it's not, well, then we know. Now we know.
Well, that's true, then we know, but then what we've done is we've created a situation where now we're creating an even bigger impact. And we're putting people going back to work at risk. We're putting compromised health people at risk. So it is true that if we just try this, we'll find out. But when we find out, I'm hopeful that if we try this, it works and that we don't have any issues. But it's the kind of risk that when you do have issues, I mean, the whole point of all these mitigation issues is because these are really serious issues when you do have them. So when you do have them, now we're putting a lot of people at risk, including other students with respect to distance learning, or in-person learning rather. I mean, if we have one outbreak, you're talking about potentially quarantining families, and their parents can't go to work, kids can't come back to school for a number of days, possibly a couple of weeks. And those numbers can get out of control very quickly. And that's why what you're seeing all over the country is happening. And it hasn't happened here yet in that respect. But I'd like to be a part of the process that doesn't let it happen, rather than say, well, we're just going to take the risk, and if it happens, then we're just putting ourselves in the same situation that everybody else is. It's dire straits for a lot of communities.
You know, I think one of the challenges we've got as a board is we really want to make the right decision, and there's no absolutely right decision that we can make related to this pandemic. There are going to be issues related to every decision that we make, and nothing is going to be without its issues. So you raised some really good points, and I agree with where you're coming from. I think there are also some corresponding significant issues if we don't. So I'm trying to figure out, where do we go with this? And this is all about risk. And I think it's important. I think these families certainly have sat down and thought about what's the risk to my student? And we as a family are willing or not willing to go through the risk here. And I hope that this is a lot more about than just, my kid wants to play, I really want to watch him. This really needs to be about risk, and as a family, what kind of risk are you willing to take? So that's not to argue either way, but it's important for us to raise this issue that just because, and I really appreciated the comments we heard a little bit earlier, especially from the students. So far, there really haven't been any problems. So far, there haven't been any problems. And you're all athletes, you know that you don't let down your guard when you're ahead in the game, right? So one of the nice things about our students in extracurricular activities, marching band and choir and theater and a whole bunch of other activities, is they tend to be some of our best leaders in our school. And I would hope that if we move down this direction, that we're going to see that leadership emerging from the families and from the students themselves that will help us be more successful in where we're going with this. But it's going to take leadership. It's going to take constantly being aware of that risk. And it's going to have to be a lot more about, I want to play, I want to win the game. It's going to have to be more than that.
And Alan, I agree with you that it's a family risk that our student athletes and their families have to make that decision. But I struggle with the fact that that's 18% of our students, right? So I'm still really concerned about the other 82% of our students that are not choosing to take this risk, that are not choosing to have all this cross-community exposure, that are not making the choices that we're allowing the families of our student athletes to make. So that, I'm just really, really stuck on that. If I'm a parent of one of those 82%, and I find out that the school board says go ahead with sports and we're going to allow our students, we're going to sanction our students going into all these communities and cross cohorts, then do I have another opportunity to opt into online learning? Because we're past the deadline. And so we've already put the package in front of 82% of our families and said this is what it is, and now this is not what that was.
So, but that's a good point. I think the online learning thing is something we need to continue to monitor. The other though is, and I don't want to be put in a position here of arguing one way or another, or advocating one way or another for this. However, I also know that it's quite possible that if we don't offer soccer, there will be club soccer.
For sure.
And we have no control over club soccer, and those students will come back. Or there will be some other activity, or, and Jamie alluded to this a little bit, there will be no activity at all. And I think that brings a lot of risk and issues, potential issues into this. So this is why I haven't been happy with any of our options all along. We're just trying to do the best we possibly can with the information that we've got and try and reflect the community in what we know out there and the advice that we're getting. So.
Yep, and Alan, I think there's absolutely no question that soccer is going to continue, whether we do it through the school or not. Juniors and clubs are going to pick it up. Same with volleyball, same with basketball, same with baseball. There's way too much money in sports for those places not to pick it up. But what I've been struggling with this weekend is, does that make it so that it ties our hands and we have to vote for this because they're going to play other places? The other thing about that I'm really, really concerned about is the clubs and the AAUs and the juniors and things like that really separate the haves and the have-nots. So as much equity as we talk about in this district, there's a whole lot of kids that can't afford to play in those other environments.
Well, that would be an argument to say that that's why we need to move forward with fall sports.
And I could live with moving forward with fall sports, but the 82% of students that didn't opt into this need an opportunity to opt out of it then, to opt out of the in-person. I don't know if I understand the implications of that on our staff, our staffing plan. I also think that our teachers and our school staff are really impacted by 180 student athletes moving into different communities, crossing cohorts, bringing that into the school. So, you know, if we can have another way, if there's a proposal, if there's anybody that has a proposal that would help make it so that 82% of our student population also has a choice in this, I am more than happy to
So
go
Cindy,
with
do you
fall
think,
sports.
there's a significant number of our families who decided to go with our hybrid option, thinking that we wouldn't have fall sports this fall?
That's what I was gonna say too.
What's that, Bob?
I think those people have already made that decision. The people that aren't comfortable with it and are not comfortable coming into the school, I just see it being such a small percentage of that group that would then be swayed by whether or not 180 kids are playing football or volleyball or, I think the people that are not comfortable being exposed to other students are already at that level and probably have made that decision. I would be shocked if we're thinking about, maybe more than a handful of people who would say, I was okay with my kid coming back to school until you allowed sports for the high school, and now I'm not okay. I just can't imagine that's the tipping point for many people.
And I think that's fantastic. Wouldn't that be great if it only really impacted 3 families, that they would do something different? I just want those 3 families to have a choice. So if it's a significant number of people, fine. If it's, I don't have enough, I don't know everybody in town, right? But I know the people that I do know were shocked in the conversation this weekend about fall sports potentially moving forward, people that don't have student athletes in the district. So I think there is some assumption that we're cohorting our groups. Why on earth would we play fall sports? So I hope it's only 1 or 2 or 3, that's great. But we have to create space for those people. And right now we don't have that, and maybe there is a plan for that, I don't know.
I think, I'm just gonna move over here. I think another way to look at that, I actually agree with you, Cindy, as well, but another way to look at it is just because we recognize and accept that there's a lot of things we can't control, like students going to work somewhere outside, going played fall sports, doesn't, to me, mean we should put ourselves in a position of being a major contributing factor potentially to creating a center of infection and spread. I mean, that's a choice we have to protect and limit that risk for our community, even if other people make choices that are against, are contrary to that choice.
I think the thing for me, I'm more in line with Amy in regard to, Jamie mentioned this, I don't think, I've got a lot of hope that things might be flat or continue to decline. I know the state numbers have been declining as a whole. I don't pay attention to nationwide as much, but I don't have a lot of hope that we're going to eliminate this or eliminate all the risk anytime between now and maybe a year from now. And I'd be surprised if we're not having some conversations about the fact that this still exists in some way, shape, or form in October, in December, in May of next year. And I just feel like pushing it further down is not going to do us any favors in terms of finding out whether or not it is workable.
But you got to play that tape out, because
to what end, though? I guess would be my question. I mean, is it 0? Is it 0 cases? Is it 1?
No, it's not 0, but it's at least not high in our prospective county.
Yeah.
And it feels good, I agree, to say, well, we can't just push it out and live with this forever. But this is temporary. I mean, this is temporary. And really what we're doing when we say we have to get back to some sense of normalcy, because we can't just keep pushing this out, is we're probably creating a situation where we're going to shut things down even worse in the nearer time frame than we would if we did push some of these things out. That's I think the reality you're going to have to deal with in another month or two, because we're not pushing some of these things out.
Yeah, and that's entirely possible. And certainly hindsight will tell us that. But
yeah,
unfortunately, too, for some of these kids, there isn't a, this is not a temporary thing. It's kind of an all or nothing thing for a lot of them too.
Well, and the good news is really, it doesn't start till September 7th, right? So what's the date today?
24th.
So we have
2 more weeks.
We have 2 weeks.
To do what?
Well, I mean, we can see in 2 weeks if it's substantially gone up or
We've
stayed
had 5
flat or
months.
whatever.
It's been going up every month for 5 months, pretty
Well,
much. I don't think it's going to do a lot of change in 2 weeks, but I hope it goes down. And I hope all of you, I don't know you folks, but I want you to know, I want you to play as much as you want to play. I was a sports guy, I was a musician. It just devastates me to think you can't play this year either. But I also don't want you to be the cause of somebody getting sick and dying potentially, or shutting the school down altogether. Now nobody can come to school. You might think that sounds kind of ludicrous, but I think that's the real risk that we're taking here. And I think we've seen it all over the place.
Mike, I have to add on to what Alan talked about, is that there's absolutely no good decision we can make with this. We've talked about that for the last 6 weeks, and we're all in the same camp there. No decision is easy to make on any of this. But I look at sports and activities as they are some of our leaders in our school. Also, those activities, create accountability, self-discipline, teamwork, hard work, self-confidence, reliance on one another. The teamwork aspect of it, obviously in a normal situation, they're talking about performance on the field. I look at this not only as performance on the field, but also performance in terms of holding up their health standards with each other. In other words, if you're not keeping your distance, if you're holding each other accountable for that as well. I think the school district puts in the mitigation standards and practices and that type of thing. But I think also the students realize that they have to self-monitor each other, hold each other accountable. I think that's a good thing.
I love it.
I think it's a
totally
wonderful
a good thing
teaching
too.
moment. The other side of this too is that I look at the self-confidence and all those other types of things and the social emotional growth for these students. Obviously we can opt, we can start it and opt to do something different. But I say we go ahead. I am all for it. I think that there's a lot of things that sports and activities teach our students that can't be taught in the classroom and never will be taught in the classroom. And for a well-rounded student, the student that's going to participate not only at this school, they're later in life and that type of thing. Sports and activities are an essential part of that.
Yeah.
As much as the academics, in my opinion.
Bob, I so totally agree with you on all of those points.
Yeah.
And it actually contributes to a different conclusion for me, though. And it's that every one of these students is a leader in that sense.
Yep.
They've demonstrated that they can do hard things. And this is hard.
Yeah.
Leadership to me is recognizing that the risk that you're putting the whole community at. That's hard. You can do hard things. I suspect the vote will go to play sports tonight, but if it didn't, I have a lot of confidence that you could get through this because you know how to do hard things. And you find other ways to exhibit that leadership. So.
And Mike, I want to piggyback on that. I think that athletes more than anybody understand the importance of putting the team first.
Yeah.
Right, and in this case, the team is the school and the community. So it's bigger than their individual sport team. And if there's ever a group of people that understands team first, it's these kids. I have one question. Is that Raleigh up there? I can't see that far. Raleigh, if these guys don't play fall sports, hypothetically, fall for them, is there a rule about contact days? How much contact will they still have with their coaches? What does fall look like for them in connection to athletics? Yes?
They will be allowed some contact. That went back to the Board of Control. We're going to hear in their September meeting what kind of contact that would be. As it is right now, there's increased contact for all sports. That lost some last year. Still to be determined. If, as it stands right now, if you didn't use your summer contact time, you can use it this fall.
Is that 5 days or is that more than that?
That would be 5 days. They are looking at, there was a request to either expand that or modify it. And again, that's not going to be decided until September.
Okay, so they're not talking about having contact days where parts of the football team can work with the coaches, parts of the volleyball, that's not on the table with the WIAA, is that right?
You could do some limited stuff with the coaches. You could have open gyms all year. To have actual coaching where the school is involved would mean our facility, our coaches, without charging them or anything.
That's okay.
Now, again, they're discussing it. All right, I don't know where they're going with that. If they want to do more, less, or the same.
Okay, thank you.
So just maybe one more point I'll make, and that is, and you mentioned the numbers. I just want to review the numbers in Pierce County. Are somewhere around 180, I think, active cases today.
No,
line-
no, that's total, right? There's 41
Yeah,
active?
sorry. In Pierce and St. Croix, sorry.
Okay, yeah.
And I think the lion's share of those cases are actually in and adjacent to River Falls. The 5 deaths that were in Pierce County are all in River Falls. And they're all from a senior living environment. I think you just have to ask yourself, with all the protections that those senior living places have put in place, how did we have such a massive outbreak in one of ours in town? That's the risk we're looking at, I think. It's not a risk I'm willing to take.
Is the board ready for a motion?
Yep.
I just want to add one thing, if I may. I know that our county health director, A.Z. Schneider, has taken some lumps, not necessarily by our board, but in some of the tough decisions that she takes. And I'll just share with the athletes in the room here tonight that, you know, when she has to line up with her position to suggest that she's not in full support of moving ahead with all sports, from her caution, from her desk, from her area of expertise, she also knows that the mental and physical well-being of kids are really important. I happen to know that she was a D1 athlete and I think a Big East champion herself, and so she's a good person and she's been very helpful to us with guidance. This just happens to be one of those issues where we've worked hand in glove with her on many things, and she has indicated she will continue to work with us if this board proceeds with a vote to go ahead with sports. She's going to continue to be at the table and help us do whatever we can with all those safety measures that Raleigh outlined before.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
You're moving for the administrative recommendation?
Yep.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
So the motion is passed. I do have something to say to the students who are here tonight on behalf of all of our athletes. And that's to say, first of all, students who spoke this evening, you did a very commendable job. You were articulate, you were prepared. I was impressed and proud of you. Thank you. The other thing I want to say is, when we're talking about risk, there are many more risks to you as athletes than a broken collarbone or pulled tendons or whatever else, concussions, whatever else you face, typically as athletes. The stakes are really big, and this board is taking a tremendous risk in trusting you to be able to do what you need to do to have fall sports continue. Mr. Hall has laid out some very impressive plans in terms of ways to keep you safe so that the spread does not happen. He's able to make decisions about what happens on the field and at practice and in the locker rooms, but those aren't the only places that matter. The other places that matter will be what you do after practice and what you do before practice. I implore you to be leaders and to make good decisions. And that means you've got to wear your masks. You've got to be socially distant. If you're going to gather together, you've got to be outside and far apart from each other. I wish it weren't that way, but that's how it is. Because if we don't do these things, I can't guarantee you that the season is going to end, but it could likely happen. And so if you want to continue in this season and have all of the things that we want you to do as athletes and as students, please play your part. Keep each other accountable. Recognize what it means, even at lunch, after school, when you'd really love just to be close with your friends. You've got to be careful. You've got to be socially distant. Okay? The school board is taking a risk, and we need you to help us mitigate the risk. All right?
And tell your parents.
Yes, it's not just you, it's your families, it's everybody. And you just, please don't take chances. Please, just don't. Okay, so we are going to now go back to informational items, and you are very welcome to stay with us and learn about all the other things that a school board does. And you know, a lot of the times it's sort of neat, but you're also welcome to go.
Thanks, Ted.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Very nice turnout of students.
A lot of distancing going on there.
Well, that really cleared up.
That's why I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to wait another 2 hours to vote.
What's that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I'm impressed with the students.
So are we back to the budget update now?
I think so.
So informational letter B, a district budget update, that was actually on the agenda as a placeholder in case anything should have changed from last time we met, which was only a week ago. And nothing has changed. We're holding steady, so we do not need to have an update at this point. So now I'm going to call on Jennifer Peterson to give us an update about the virtual e-school. This is a simple update. This has to do with enrollment and projections about the people part of the school. We're actually going to have another update next week that will be a glimpse or a window into what a day in the life of a e-school student will be like.
So today we had our first day with all of our staff together.
A little closer, please.
Get closer. So today we had our first day, so now we officially have 8 schools within the River Falls School District. A current update, on the second slide you'll see that yes, our initial application deadline was on August 12th. We extended that based on the presentation last week to let everybody know that we would take alternative applications over this past week. That closed last Friday on the 21st. And you will see that our 4K through 12th grade enrollment as of today is 373 students. We had approximately 24 applications come in. We had a few shifts in selection. Some families decided that they wanted to go back to face-to-face or in a different school district. Some decided to open and roll out. Others decided to homeschool. As families are making these final decisions, we did land on 373 as that final, the final numbers that we have.
Well,
so we've
Jennifer,
been building our class sizes based on that.
Jennifer, sorry, can you just remind me, what was it last Monday, 358?
It was just around 360 to 361,
Okay,
so
thank you.
between some of those shifts and changes in enrollment, we actually were able to accept all of the alternative enrollments that did come in over this past week. We had space available in our classrooms that we currently have, and that's a demographic slide that I have a little bit later on in here. We're still following our class guidelines, but we were able to accommodate those. So if you want to go to just the last 3 slides, Erin, I think. There you go. You can see our program enrollment from the River Falls Public Montessori Elementary all the way up to the high school. You can see the demographic and that particular class size breakdown where our numbers fell. Pretty consistent at Greenwood, Rocky, and West Side. And then Meyer Middle School and the high school are landed on right about 78 and 74. We could go up to 80 students is what we had projected would be our maximum enrollment at the secondary level, should we need to adjust that. The next slide as well kind of shows you where our class sizes are for all of our teachers. We have one that tipped based on a medical request from a principal that went over our 28 that we wanted to, and so we're making sure that Ms. Young has the support she needs to be successful in that class. And again, as I said, we had our first in-service day today. We spent a lot of time doing additional training, really laying out program expectations, making sure that the staff were feeling comfortable in the transition to being able to support all 373 students that they have. So we're working on finalizing schedule and getting ready for orientation. We will have family orientation this Thursday from 12 to 6 for our secondary students, and the elementary families will have orientation next Tuesday, September 1st. We will be doing that basically at the same time that our elementary schools will be doing their virtual orientations too. We're going to have face-to-face components for families to pick up supplies and materials and accommodate them virtually as well, if applicable.
Jennifer, are Jeannie and Connie team teaching, or why are they both there?
Yes, Jeannie and Connie, as we transitioned and took positions within, we kind of collapsed both of their coaching roles and then yet still allowed them half time to be able to support teachers with our curricular materials and resources in the district and all of the Title I programs that we have.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Jennifer?
We do have Jenny Shellstead is transitioning into the high school paraprofessional role, and we just posted a paraprofessional role to support Brianne and Carly at our middle school. So that's a position we're going to be filling as soon as possible.
Jennifer?
Yes, Bob?
Did I hear you correctly, and you said you were able to accommodate all that were on the waiting list?
Yes, all of the families that did submit an application this week, we were able to put them into slots based on the fact that we were still underneath the enrollment cap that we had established.
Wonderful job.
So,
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
yep. So we'll see you next week with a different comprehensive presentation.
So
Thank you, Jennifer.
I have one more question if I can, just real quick. I guess I'm maybe asking this on your behalf, Cindy. I don't want to speak for you, but you had some questions about what would happen based on the vote that would just happen for athletics if somebody were to come now and say, hey, I'm not as supportive of that. I would like to move. Is there a new waiting list? Are we past that point? Yeah, I know the stance has always been we're trying to make all accommodations possible. Is that still something that's on the table?
Kind of a little bit of both. We really are trying to get all of our students enrolled and ready to go so that we can communicate effectively with the parents on the schedules and really helping them transition. Really right now, with a few seats that we potentially would have available to maximize out, I'm really working with the high school principals as they have certain medical issues or families that maybe were unaware of this information, or maybe there's a new situation that would arise, working with them if they're advocating for enrollment here. The other concern is families, as school comes back, if the mask issue becomes a concern and we need to put them into our program, it's kind of nice to have a couple available seats to be able to adjust and accommodate that. So we don't have a new alternative window open. It's really about advocacy with the high school principal, middle school principal, and elementary principals at this time.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Jennifer. We'll see you later. All right, Chad, we have a referendum construction update, please.
Wow, it is a long walk down those steps. By and large, we stand at the end of our referendum process in terms of project completion. We are wrapping up probably high 90% of our percentage of our work here as we get to the end of this week. And this week is really, we're reaching what's called a point called substantial completion of our project. So we're essentially hitting that this week. What that means is by the end of the week, our schools will look like schools. And so, and our work referendum construction projects will essentially be completing. We will still be working on what are called punch list items. Those are small details that as we begin to get into the spaces in our schools and use them, we identify minor details, we hope minor details that need to be corrected or fixed, for which the contractor is responsible. So a lot of work under our belt here. No project goes perfect. We had a lot of great points with and things that went very well and that we got lucky on. But it was difficult, obviously, on staff, teachers, and people who, over the course of the last 2 years, had to arrange their spaces, rearrange their spaces, move schools, and relocate. So, but all in all, we are nearly complete, and I would say we've been fairly successful from this perspective that all the work we had promised the community we would be able to do through this referendum process was in fact completed or will be completed here shortly, and in total on budget. So just a few of the highlights of primarily 4 schools that we were finishing up on here this summer. The high school, you'll remember we invested pretty heavily in a partially referendum funded and partially district capital maintenance budget funded project to install new boilers. So those boilers are in and are being fired up this week. So this building here this week will still have about 15 or 20 Harris Mechanical employees running around testing things with that to make sure that it's doing what it needs to do. But that project will be wrapping up here this week. West Side was a big project this summer, and we, as I mentioned earlier, had the fine opportunity to start that project a little earlier than originally planned. We kind of started it in the April timeframe instead of having to wait until June. So that, of course, allowed us to get a little ahead on that project. So we were pretty well done there. We just have commissioning agents testing our heating and ventilation system there, primarily just to make sure that's working well. But I think if you take a walk through there, you'll notice probably the only big thing left would be the second lift of asphalt, I guess in what we would call the playground area, there on literally the west side of West Side. So otherwise, wrapping up nicely. The middle school, we have, what's cool is we will finally be achieving total air conditioning in that building. And so that project, we're gonna be finishing that up here this fall for back to school. And the big roof project, which was funded through contingency savings, we had a substantial roof project there that is done as well. And so we just have some Harris Mechanical crew members that'll be working there here in the next couple of weeks to get all the last details, the next many weeks here to just get the last details done on that project. And then finally the Montessori, that project was turned over to us, as I mentioned, a little earlier this summer, but just working on some outside grounds details to get finished, but otherwise we are wrapping up with that as well. So the next step really in our referendum process is to essentially get most of these smaller punch list items done. The hope is that those details would be wrapped up as we start to get toward the end of October, very early to part of November. And at that point, we will probably be doing the last of our pay applications to Krause Anderson for that project. And as we really get to the last nickels and dimes probably of this, the hope is we will have a few of those left. But we're absolutely on budget in total. And like I said, a largely successful project. So,
Chad, after the last referendum, not like these happen all the time. So, but there was a time where we were able to sort of tour and see what had been done. And it's sort of, so that we can see, it's also a little bit celebratory. So, because we don't get in the buildings that often, it's nice to see it. With everything going on this year, it's going to be a little more difficult. But I would think it would be really nice if we could figure out some way in the months ahead for us to get into, especially the significant ones, versus board members, to see informally what the construction looks like. So
That'd be great, and we also actually have the Montessori, the time capsule, that we're kind of waiting for that right moment, you know, and we're kind of basing it on your discussions here earlier this evening, but to pick that right date and time where we're going to be able to kind of replace the new time capsule in the building. So if we could kind of wrap that into a nice evening of, you know, song and dance and a tour of a few of the schools.
But beyond that, just because of COVID and we're not even allowing parents to go into schools and stuff like that, it would be really nice if Monique and company could do a really nice video to go through and highlight, just like we did for the rest of the construction process. That would be really nice to
in fact, then
showcase it.
Everybody could see it.
Then everybody could see it.
Good idea.
I would respectfully request that.
That would be great. It doesn't have to be done this week, but in the coming weeks. We might just put a mask inside that time capsule for the year that it's, and then put a story in there.
Yeah, we definitely should do that.
I think so. I think so. Thank you, Ted. Thank you also for the considerable work that you've done to keep it on time, on budget, figuring out what to do with the contingency dollars, providing oversight, even through these last months when everything has been in disarray. So thank you very much. All right, we are now going to move on to action items, and the first thing is to consider if any conditions warrant a change or a pivot from the hybrid learning environment. Jamie, is there anything that the administration
No recommended
recommend?
change, nope.
I imagine that now going forward, when we ask that question each week, it will also include the dimension of, is it safe for our sports to continue? We've already done B, so now we're going to move on to C. I assume that the board and hopefully the community recognizes that we received federal and a state grant to fund the purchase of the property adjoining the school forest. Actually, it was the Kinney Land Trust that properly received the grant, but it is going to be of great benefit to the school district. At this point, we do need to proceed with a memorandum of understanding related to the easement agreement so that we each have access to the other's land, so that the school district is able to access the Kinney land and the Kinney land can access our land. Jamie and I met with people from the Kinney Land Trust. We are in agreement about what is right for the two entities. The attorneys are figuring out the final details. But at this point, we would like to ask the board to allow me as the board president and Jamie as the superintendent to finalize the details of the agreement and then sign on behalf of the school board. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Alan. Is there a second?
Second.
Todd? This is really exciting. And I don't want the importance of this to get lost in all of the proceedings of the last months with all of the complications that we've had. It represents many things, opportunities for our students, but also it's really a reflection of the great community support that we have and cooperation and relationships that we have in this between the school district and the community. So this is a gigantically big win for our community. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I do. Why not bring it before finance and facilities? Why just between the board president and superintendent? Just curious.
Yeah, one is, I think, rather than just bring it in front of finance and facility, for now we've suspended our committee approach, and so it naturally could come back in front of the full board. The main reason why we took this approach here is because we don't want to hold up the process for the Kinney Land Trust. They have requirements before they receive two rather large checks, one a federal grant, one a state grant, they have to show evidence that there is this easement agreement in place. And to be honest, it's just so that we don't put a delay on them to expedite something where they have to wait for our next board meeting, nor to have us call a special board meeting. The concept is that there's this access road that they are purchasing that literally connects to our property, and then their property connects to our property. And so essentially all this agreement says is they're giving us access to that access road, and it needs to be in writing that what they're providing us with currently is not a paved, not an improved road, to clarify that. If we wanted to do snow removal on that path, if we want to take a group of kids out there in the wintertime, we're in charge of snow removal. They're not in charge of doing that. Moving forward in the future, if and when the day comes we make improvements to that road, they will continue to partner with us, but they just need to clarify that that promise is not on the table, that they're going to provide us with a paved road. Then when you get to the end of the road again, it connects to our property, and they want to be able to step across our property to get access to their own 40 acres that they purchased that they will be purchasing in addition to the access road. So technically they're purchasing two properties, the access road and the other 40. We just didn't want it to have to call a special board meeting or cause some delay for them to do the paperwork they have with the state and the federal grant. That's why we took this approach here tonight.
Are you doing it under advice of counsel?
Pardon me?
Yeah, no, that's.
Oh, yeah, our attorney, we literally submitted a comprehensive proposal to Kinney Land Trust. They took the first stab at it, and now we're back kind of on round two of just finalizing the details. There is no controversy here. There's no drama here. There's no disagreement on anything. It's just a matter of putting it down into a understandable, readable document that's not 52 pages long. Try to keep it simple, stick to the fine points, and that's it. If the board isn't comfortable with the vote that's proposed here, we can do it in a different way, but we are definitely working with our own legal counsel on this matter.
Jamie, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of the school forest land is that it's an island, right? We have no legal access to it.
Correct.
So this is a once in a maybe lifetime opportunity to get access, legal access to the property. So I don't see as much, I see no controversy.
Yep.
You know, I think it's a wise thing to do.
Jamie, is there any district money involved at this point?
Currently, no financial commitment. I have alluded to the Kinney Land Trust that I think our school board in the future would support. I think there's about $35,000 that's been sitting in a line item in our fund balance for a decade. And we received that money because years ago, the land purchase that we made, there was a land swap involved and so on, that we, the district, created a conservation easement, and in the process of that, the easement says it will not be developed. We're going to preserve it as pristine wilderness and so on. In exchange, the state gave the district this $35,000.
Yep.
And so the only thing that I've ever alluded to with the Kinney Land Trust is that I thought in the future that this board may vote in favor of that investment.
But at this point, whatever you and Stacy would be doing wouldn't involve spending?
Not one penny, not a dollar is involved in any authority that this vote would be providing. No money involved.
Thanks.
Anything else? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. It is now time for us to identify future agenda items. I have two. The first one I already alluded to, and that's that we are going to receive at our next meeting a presentation that helps us to gain some understanding about what a day looks like in the life of an e-school student. And so we will look at it from an elementary perspective as well as a secondary perspective. That's the first one. The second one, I'm wondering if we could have a continued conversation about the hotspots. I know we've already touched on this, but I think that there are some other plans in terms of additional access, particularly for our older students, and if we could talk about that. Are there any other items?
I was going to mention that same thing. I know we've had a couple emails and I've had people reach out to me, but on Friday I was in Spring Valley and I tried to have a phone call on my way home, and I think it dropped 4 times between Spring Valley and River Falls. And part of that was within what I would consider to be our district. I don't know exactly where that line changes. I think it's somewhere near the Rush River, but that was a little frustrating for me, and I wasn't trying to do any homework or work on any projects, and so I haven't been able to think since then of a good way to to solve that issue in terms of a space or something that would bring people together, but I'd like to continue to hear what that looks like or what other options might exist.
My guess is we're talking about a combination of actual physical hotspots as well as access to some space that would have.
Yeah, and that's the part I haven't really been able to come up with a good idea myself, but I just would challenge us to try to keep doing something like that.
It's more than just connectivity. It's more than just connectivity. It's really space as well. So, okay,
Probably
for a temporary
supervision.
thing, you've done your work and you need to go somewhere and upload it. Maybe you can drive and park outside the library and upload it. But if you're going to work for any extended period of time, sitting out in the parking lot outside the library or the district office or something isn't always the most conducive way to do that. So are there options for us to have space for students in addition to connectivity?
We have been discussing some of those options to include the option of, for example, whether we could open up the high school library to allow access. Maybe it's not just for high school students. We'd need to have supervision. We've met and toured the public library, and they are offering, until the time comes when the public library was open to the public, they're offering some space specific in their basement. Again, we'd need to provide some supervision, but we have been exploring and looking at some of those options. The last thing I'll mention is we also know that we will not be able to identify all of the problems for people until we start doing this. Unfortunately, we don't have there's no way for us to diagnose ahead of time in all cases for all people, but we are listening to that concern, and we will give an update to the board next week along that line.
Thank you. Any other agenda items? All right, then we're going to schedule future meetings. There will be a special Board of Education meeting on Monday, August 31st at 6 o'clock. Another special Board of Education meeting on Monday, September 14th at 6 o'clock. The next regular board meeting will be Monday, September 21st at 6, and the annual meeting will be Monday, September 21st at 8 o'clock. At this point, I would request that we move into executive session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute Section 19.851G for the purpose of discussing strategy and/or possible litigation. Is there a motion, please? Thank you, Amy. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Bob. I need a roll call vote. Cindy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
I'm saying yes.
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 Bob?